Hello, 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 hello. Hi, buddy. We live, we live, we live. That's it. Okay, cool. Just waiting for a guest of honor, Mr. Chabalala. Cool. While we wait for him, anyways, I'm not sure if everybody has this book, but it's quite a great book. It's called The One Thing. I've been reading through it during the week. It is an interesting book. It's just a different perspective to say, don't try and do everything all at once. One thing at a time, whether it's one thing a day or whether it's one thing a week, one thing a month, one thing a year, but it's effectively one thing at a time. So yeah, give it a read, give it a quick squeeze, give it a read. It's definitely interesting. I mean, it gives a different perspective to life. Yeah, anyways, while we wait for him, there's also another one I've also been reading. It's called Think Small. It doesn't mean that you won't be a millionaire, or you can't think like a millionaire, or whatever the case is. It just means think small, meaning start small. And effectively, this is, I think, one of the traps that entrepreneurs kind of get into, which is that they don't think small. They just want to start everything all at once and just want to go through every single thing, and they've got this great big idea, and then they go for the whole thing, the kitchen sink as we call it. But sometimes it's just important that we start them. Short soul. So I got mine from Take a Lot, effectively. But you can also get yours. You can also order. I think there's also some at some of the local bookstores that you would see. So yeah, that's where you can get them. One is called Think Small, and the other one is One Thing at a Time. So let me just check here if there's. I don't see a request from him as yet to join the live session. While we wait for him, so I'm just gonna give him a quick squeeze here and see what is while we wait for him. I don't see him as yet. Yes, I was feeling that's a pretty much great concept, eh? Okay, cool. There we go. Prudence. There we go. Just waiting for Mr. Chabalala to join us, and we'll kick things off. Yep. Mr. Chabalala?
Hi, how are you?
I'm watching yourself.
Yeah.
Your screen is a bit blurry. Do you mind flipping your camera as well?
Is it
Kind
fine
of
now?
side. Yes, do you mind flipping the camera as well? You're kind of sideways.
Okay.
I have to sort of twist my my
Is it fine now?
head.
Is it fine?
No, you're kind of looking sideways. It's like
Sideways.
that. Yes, that's there. There we go. There we go. There we go. There we go.
Okay.
How are you doing, Mr. Chavala?
Well, and you?
Well, thank you, man. Thank you for joining us on such a short notice, be it. But I think the conversation is important and needs to be heard. The name is Dumisani, and yeah, I'll be your host for the day, and just to have a conversation around remaining positive in a negative environment, right? So I believe your trade is you are a motivational speaker, if I am correct, amongst other things that you do. Yeah, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we continue?
All right. My name is Sai Chabalala, as you said. I'm an author, educator. I'm a former educator, but with education, you don't stop being a teacher.
Yes.
I've teach classes from the small classroom in the school to the bigger classroom, which is the world. I'm also a trainer, a life coach, and yeah, basically, I would say that an activist, basically. I believe in human development.
That's great. That's great. I think maybe just getting, and let's just dive into it, right? It has been one of the most craziest years, both mentally and financially, for the country.
Yeah.
Like, what are your takes on it? I mean, it's been I don't think, I mean, we can spend the whole session trying to discuss this, but I mean, it has been one of the most hectic years that we've ever experienced. What are your takes on it?
Uh, One thing that I've learned, we will not always be in control of everything that happens to us. Life is a journey of ups and downs. But there's something that I've learned that you can't stop birds of the same. You can stop birds from flying over your head, but you can stop them from laying a nest on top of your head. So, in other words, in any given situation, you can choose your response to whatever that you are going through. So, COVID, nobody knew about the corona, nobody knew about the challenges that we are faced with in 2020. But we can choose how we respond to that. We can't stop it, but we can choose our response to that situation.
How do you get that thought process going? I mean, it's a difficult thing to kind of comprehend. I mean, where do I start as an individual? Where I've been battered, I've been bruised, and it feels like someone is still kicking me while I'm down. How do you
Yeah.
start that thought process?
I think it has to start with, I like the word responsibility. The word responsibility is made up of two words, response and ability. In other words, you have the ability to respond. So many times when we go through situations, instead of, using our ability to respond, we react. Because when you react, you panic. When you react, you stress. When you react, you are depressed. But when you respond, it's like, look at a situation. I mean, I would study like when people encounter things like hurricanes. What is the first thing that you do when they say there's a hurricane?
I'll run.
The first thing that you do, yeah, you run. Survive first. And then after you have survived, you have to figure out, what else am I going to do? Just a second.
Yeah.
After that, you have to figure out, what else am I going to do? You figure out after you have survived. So you survive first. And after you have survived the storm, then you figure out, what can I do, to come out of this situation? Or what can I do to turn my situation around? So that's how you look. For example, a lot of businesses, they crumbled. A lot of businesses were crushed by the coronavirus.
Yes.
And many people, like some, they even contemplated suicide because of COVID. And I must add that I'm a student of history. One thing that I've learned is that nothing is new in this world. Somebody somewhere went through a similar situation and they managed to come out of it victoriously. So when you study the world, you get, for example, the issue of COVID. It may be new to us, but it's not new. I mean, it happened in 1918, and over 50 million people were killed. So as a history student, I would go and study what happened in 1918. And I realized that there were a lot of people who lived during that time, people who managed to take their life out of that COVID, out of that situation. I mean, do you know that people like Ray Kroc of McDonald's, basically was born in 1901. And when COVID hit, he was 17 years old. So imagine a 17-year-old, you experience all that. And while he was recovering, after the COVID, I mean, it was in 1914, the First World War, 1914 to 1918. After the First World War, trying to recover is COVID. After COVID, it is the Great Depression. Again, people lost businesses, people committed suicide. Out of that, it was the First World War, 1939 to 1945. But a man like Ray Kroc came out of it. Today. When you go to McDonald's, you see somebody who survived those storms. So what does it tell you? That we too, we have the ability to respond. We have that responsibility, the ability to respond to any given situation that we find ourselves in. So rather than sitting and making excuses or giving up, we can say, okay, what can I do out of this?
I like that word, responsibility, and the ability to respond. I like that phrase. I mean, it reminds me of a comment that Warren made, I think just during the pandemic, when he was effectively about to retire. And I recall him saying he is not retiring anytime soon. Why? Because this is the most opportune moment where opportunities kind of stick out. Like there is so much opportunities that if you stick to a positive mindset and then kind of figure out some of the opportunities that are there, there's quite a lot of opportunities that are there. And I think that's what some people need to kind of look at and think at in terms of this pandemic as well. Although it's a difficult kind of situation, but I mean, there's so much opportunities in there.
Yeah. No, sure, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Definitely. Let's take a side break from that and let's talk about some of your books or some of your work that you're doing. What books, what kind of books do you kind of write? Just for the audience out there.
Okay, I write a book. All the books that I've written, they're under the series called Being Positive in a Negative World. That's a series.
Yeah.
And so I will have, for example, my first book, Spice Weekly Nuggets. Being Positive in a Negative World, Spice Weekly Nuggets. So weekly, it's like there's a message for every week. 52 weeks, you've got 52 messages. So I put those messages, they touch different aspects. It's like why I did 52 weeks, not many people read. So you want to create something that is easier, that people can find it easy to read. If it's a weekly thing, you would say, okay, I never had a chance to read on a Monday, but I can read on a Tuesday, Wednesday. So you read that for the week. And then the following week, again, you've got another message. So I wrote that. That was my first book. It was in response to then when I was still a high school educator, always in the street, whenever there is industrial action, I'll be one of the people with a cardboard in front. But I realized that every time I carry a cardboard, my situation was not changing. Instead, what I would experience would be no work, no pay. My salary would be docked for me having marched. And so I sat down and I said, what can I do? And during one of the times when industrial action, when people went to the streets, I decided to go to CNA. And when I got there, I sat around looking for something to read, to inspire me. And during my, traveling time, like right now, when we go through COVID, that's when we need to look for books that we can read. Because when you read a book, it changes your perspective. So I found a book called Chicken Soup for the Soul. I said, what is it all about? When I read a book, I found that the book was written by a high school educator from the US, Jack Canfield. And after reading the book, I got inspired. I said, but if an educator can write a book, why can't I also write a book as an educator from South Africa? And during that strike, I didn't go to the street. I stayed at home. I started writing a book, my own inspirational book. And when the school opened, I printed a couple of copies, went back to the school, and guess what? My learners were excited. For the first time, they saw an author in the yard. I mean, it was
Yes.
something that was common in Mamelodi, an author in the yard. So,
Yes.
and what I did, I like young people. I shared my dream with young people because adults, young people they've got dreams. Adults, they've got challenges. If you tell old people about your dreams, they will tell you it's impossible because they've gone through a lot of impossible situations. So I shared it with my young learners. They were excited, and my first book came out. The learners started. They bought it in the yard, 500 copies. For the first time in my life, I had people asking for my autograph. I mean, my signature was just used to sign their books, to sign for my salary advice and all that, you know, circulars. But for the first time, somebody started asking me for my signature. And yeah, I started getting invitation to speak. And I remember then, in 1999, I mean 2009, I was invited somewhere to speak for an hour. And I was surprised that somebody was prepared to give me 1,000 rand to speak for an hour. And I said, I didn't know that my voice can create an invoice. So yeah, from there,
Yeah.
I got inspired to.
That sounds like a terrific story. What inspired you to write the book though? Like what, I mean, apart from um, you had some time and that, what's the deep kind of inspirational thing that said, you know what, I'm writing this book and this book is gonna be for other people to be inspired as well.
One thing, I'm an avid reader. I've read a lot of books, and I must say, we go to your bookshops. There are books written by Americans most of the times. I mean, our bookshops, they are filled with and quotes by Americans.
Yeah.
Now, some of the things that they say, we can't relate to them because our situations are different. Like today, I had a discussion with one of my protege. We're talking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a great book. It talks about you being in property, owning multiple properties. But now here's the challenge. In South Africa, looking at the color of my skin, I can get one property, yes, from the bank, because they say borrow money from the bank. But if you go, do you think the bank will give you another bond for a house? No, they are not. So what happens is I said, I need to write books that are not there. So I wrote that book, books that I want to be read, but that are not there. So I wrote my own book from my own personal experience. So I put it in there. The book was about what I have learned, what I've gone through, and what I have had other people having encountered in their lives. And I put all those stories together and made it a book.
Bring it back home. Bring it back home. So it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's easier to relate to I guess stories that you kind of that are based on kind of a homely feel, something you find easier to relate. And I guess that kind of forms the inspiration that will give other people that, look, this person has gone through that, or this person is speaking about that. I can actually relate. And that's absolutely amazing. But I mean, just going back again, in this world, I mean, if you if you pull out your phone or you're reading an app or whatever it is, or you're trying to read news, I think there's so much negativity. Whether it's in the news or it's in, I think I got to a point at one point in time where I was like, you know what, I'm not reading any news feeds anymore. And the reason for that is I found news feeds so negative. I mean, there is no positive stories that. I mean, there is some, but it's so far and few in between there that it's kind of difficult. I mean, where do you, like, in terms of your reading, where do you find your source? I mean, like, how do you find comfort in reading a magazine, or a newspaper rather, but all you find is just so much negativity in there? How do you remain positive around that?
Well, I would say, firstly, we live in a world where negative news sells. Your organization, you guys are doing a great job. You're not going to be on the front page of any newspaper because nobody's going to buy that. But if there's a scandal, it will be the front page because we live in a world where negative news sells. Now, what I do is, like, to me, I treat whatever that I read as a buffet, whether it's the news on the TV. I select what I watch. Like I'll pick up, I said, oh no, this is negative. I simply change the channel. I look for something inspirational that I can get. And it's so strange. If you go for a buffet, I mean, they will dish out, they'll put different kinds of dishes in front of you. You choose
Yes.
what you want to eat. So
Yeah.
even when coming to newspapers, whether it be magazines or television, again, you have to choose what you want to read, what you want to listen to. Whether it's
Yeah.
music, you choose what you want to listen to. We can't say everything about media is bad. There's something positive. If the front page is all negative stuff, I'll go to the second, the third, the fourth. Hopefully, in the middle pages, I'll find something inspirational.
I think that's absolutely a good point there. I see Kam was asking a question. Where did you develop the love of airplanes? Oh, you are a pilot, or are you into airplanes?
No,
What's your...
I'm passionate about aircrafts. You know, I grew up like watching aircraft passing by. You know, when I grew up, then people of our color were not allowed to become pilots. You know, that was a career not for us. But that didn't stop me from developing the love for it. So what I would do is like I would, you know, watch any documentary that talks about aircrafts. I would go and buy magazines on aircraft, Air News. You know, there were different magazines, Pilot, SA Pilot, and I'll read those magazines because that is something that I was passionate about. The fact that I could not be a pilot didn't stop me, you know, from going ahead with my passion for aviation. And guess what? When you are passionate about something, you start meeting other people who are passionate about what you are doing, and you end up becoming part of the organization. Like right now, I'm in an organization called Wonders of Aviation, and we're trying to get as many young people to, you know, to empower them, to equip them about opportunities that are there in the aviation industry, and what can they do. You know, what a subject they can study, what are opportunities that they can pursue in pursuing aviation. So yeah, nothing stops one from doing that.
And I think that's a very, very, very great thing in terms of what subject to study, in terms of getting into that particular field. Because I think back in the days, in my high school days, sitting in front of a teacher, going through physics, or whatever subject it was, me wondering, why am I calculating how high a plane is at this point in time? And I didn't relate to that at that point in time because I didn't understand, why am I doing this? It just felt so complicated, but I didn't get that. But I think reaching out to the youth and saying, look, if you want to do this, this is what you do. This is the subjects that you need to study. That is absolutely beautiful. Sorry, can you repeat that name of the organization for our viewers?
Wonders of Aviation.
Wonders of
Wonders,
Aviation.
yeah.
Okay, that's beautiful. I just wanted to touch on a different topic, right? Keeping in theme, there's something that I came across which spoke about emotional hygiene, right?
Okay.
For me, it's effectively this, right? If as an individual, I mean, you take care of yourself, you go take showers, you bath, just to keep yourself nice and healthy and clean. But I think what most people tend to sometimes miss on is that emotional hygiene. And as an entrepreneur, as someone that wants to be in the entrepreneurial world, how important do you think that level of thought is in terms of emotional hygiene and keeping clean?
Firstly, I must say, being an entrepreneur is not a bed of roses, because many a times what you see on the media, you know, people like they are multi-millionaire, and there's a story behind. I'm that kind of a person. I don't get inspired by, you know, impressed by the glamour. I always want to find the story behind, because there's always a story behind. Now, when we come to the issue of emotional, you know, hygiene, many a times it's like people have unrealistic expectations. You get there hoping that I'm going to do business, make millions, become rich, drive a Ferrari, and that's not how life is. There's a lot of things involved. If I'm going to get involved in business, I need to do my research. I have to research extensively. Personally, there were some where I made a lot of mistakes because I did not like research. I mean, I'll just share a bit. I mean, when I started writing books, I thought you write a book, it becomes a bestseller, then you make them millions because you see all of them on Instagram, you see them on YouTube, all these big shots. But there's a lot of information that they don't give you. It's only now you have to research. And when you research, you get to know a lot of things. You get to understand how the system works because everything in life is a system. Entrepreneurship is a system. You have to understand this is a system. Now, how do I tweak the system to work for me? Because if I don't understand the system, I'm not going to make it. So what do you do? As part of your emotional makeup, it's like you do your research. You do your research about what you're going to do. Secondly, you have to make sure you surround yourself with the right people. Yeah. If I'm going to be pursuing a dream and I'm surrounded, like when I was writing, I wanted to write a book. I will not share that with my colleagues because if I told them, I remember one of them saying, nobody will read our books. I mean, people don't read books. So I did not want to consult people because I have learned one thing. Never ever consult people who are not doing what you want to be. Let me repeat again. Never ever consult people who are not doing what you want to be. So what you do, you look for people who are doing what you want to be or who have achieved what you want to be. And then you start like listening, sitting at their feet. And when you sit at their feet, you get to learn what is it, the system. How do they operate in them becoming a success story? So when you learn the system, you said, okay, all right, now I need to have a brain trust. I need to surround myself because again, business is network. If I'm always broke and I'm hanging around broke people, I'll never be rich. But if I want to be rich, I need to get into the network of rich people because when you get into their network, you get to understand their way of thinking. You get to understand their mannerism, their behavior. And you start like, I mean, there are a lot of books that talks about 21 habits of millionaires. You look at their habits. What is it that they do? I mean, I would ask myself certain questions like as I'm sitting as part of my emotional hygiene. If I want to become a successful author or businessman, do businessmen watch what I watch? I don't want to get into the details of like some of the channels that we watch. Do they watch what you watch? And then you'll realize that I don't think a businessman will watch such a program. So basically, what is it that I'm doing watching this program? Yes. Like, will a businessman read this kind of, like one gentleman, he went for an interview in one big company in Joburg. And when he got there, it was a financial position. So they said to the gentleman, as part of the interview, would you go and buy a newspaper? Because they wanted to, in the private sector. So this guy went in and he came with a Daily Sun. And they looked at him, they realized, no, this is not the right person. Because this guy doesn't understand that you cannot be in the financial sector and then you read, newspapers like Daily Sun. You have to read, the Business Times and all that. So it's all about what is it that you eat? What do you eat? Because you become what you eat. So I've got to change my diet. I've got to change my company. I've got to change my thought life. And how do you change your thought? By what you're daily feeding yourself. Even the same with music. I check what kind of music am I listening to. There are certain music after listening to it, you are depressed. But certain music you listen to it, you are inspired. So you better check what is it that you are feeding yourself.
Food for the soul, definitely.
What makes sense?
Absolutely. One point that you mentioned there was networking. I find it difficult as a black person to kind of figure out where do black people network. I'll tell you that a lot of people, white people, make that decisions in golf courses. That's a very expensive networking scheme, if I were to put it that way.
Yeah.
How do we get as black people to find places that actually speak to us and say, look, we are here to have conversations about business and then make money? I mean, Busy Corner is not a place where you make decisions, but where do we find that one sweet spot to say, where we say, look, we're here to have a conversation about business?
That's a good question. One thing that I've observed is that most black people, we want to operate as individual in the world of team players. You see, this world, everything is team players. You're not going to make it as an individual. In the area of business, it's team players. You're not gonna make it. It's like right now, let me bring you the issue of the land. You are given a farm, okay? And they said, okay, fine, here's a farm. I believe in that, you know, redistribution of the land. People must get the land. But then we don't have supply chain. If I'm given the land and then I'm busy farming or I'm producing maize, where am I going to sell the maize? Or if I'm producing beef or poultry, where am I going to sell it when I don't have a supply chain? And most of the time, black people don't patronize each other's business. We don't support each other's business. If somebody's doing business, like right now, you've got a brand. You find me wearing a Gucci when you have your own brand that I could have supported my brother. It's like, why must I support my brother? I prefer to wear Gucci. So I was saying this. I said, we better start thinking, changing how we look at things. It's like right now, I'm in the space of writing books. If I've got what, 5,000 friends on Facebook, and the truth of the matter is not all of them are my friends.
Yeah.
Roughly, if I'm going to be conservative, you find that out of the 5,000, maybe 150 are my real friends. Okay? Now, if the 150 who are my real friend, I've written a book and they don't really promote that book, surely, I mean, those people are honestly speaking, they are not supposed to be in my space. I better start looking around, getting the right people around me. Because if you know 100 people, the 100 people that I know, they promote my work, they promote wherever my books. And then as you promote your book in your own, you know, space, there's 100 people also, you've got 3,000 friends, but 100 of them are your friends. Now the 100 also, they are like, you know, the book that you are promoting because they believe in you. Whatever you promote, you're going to buy. And then the other 100, whatever that you're going to promote, before you know it, you've got a big chain. And at the end of the day, my work, my books are being bought. The same whether you've got a brand and we all support that brand, ultimately becomes a success chain. So all I'm saying is, rich people may meet in a golf course, but nothing stops us from looking for people, like-minded people, and say, okay, we're going to meet at McDonald's. We're still down there. We're going to find, you know, 2, 3, 4 friends. We meet at McDonald's. I'm that kind of a person where there are some people, when you meet them, it's like a waste of time. You mentioned the issue of emotional hygiene. There are some people, if we're going to make it in 2021, we need to remove them from our life. We need to, because if you remove the wrong people, the right people will show up. If I hang around, if the friends that I have, they are the kind of friends where we can go on a drinking spree, but we can't talk about business, then I don't need those kind of friends. Unless if we are drinking a beverage produced by one of our own in our circle. Now that's you are supporting your own. But if I'm just gonna drink, you know, whiskey, scotch from Scotland, and at the end of the day, I as a black man doesn't benefit from it, what's the use of it? So we need to start getting people, like-minded people. As they say, best of the same feather flock together. Find like-minded people, you hang around them, you know, you create that. We have to create it. If we can go to the golf course, nothing stops us from meeting McDonald's, meeting in a park, meeting in a zoo, wherever. We said, guys, I've got friends who are interested in business. Do you also have, like, let's meet. So we meet. I mean, I look at Muslims. I'm not a Muslim, but I admire certain things about them. They meet in a mosque. They don't just go there and pray. After praying, there's networking. That's why when you go a businessman that is run by a Muslim, he will tell you whatever that you're looking for. If he doesn't have it, he says, I've got my friend there, Mahmoud, down there, he will help you. And then if they understand that it's a chain. If you don't build a chain, you're not going to make it. Here's also, look at the Somalis. The Somalis took the spaza shop. I studied them. What is it that made them successful? The Somalis are a unit. They are not individuals. You are running a spaza as an individual. They are running spazas as a group. So when they go and buy bread, they negotiate for a better discount because they are a group and they are not individuals. So what happens is they get better discounts and they come and compete with me. So surely they will sell bread cheaper because they managed to get discounts for that bread. I will sell it more expensive because I don't have, I could not negotiate for the discount. So I think we need to start creating those kind of networks ourselves. Look for places where we can meet. If it's church, you go to church. I don't believe in church where I just go and pray. I close my eyes. No, we have closed our eyes for too long. We need to open our eyes and say, what can we do? I
Yes,
mean, I was
yes.
saying to one friend of mine who's a pastor. I said, I'm tired of all night prayers. Can't we have all night thinking where people
Mm.
just come and then all night you think, what can we do?
What can we
To,
do? Yes.
what can we do? So imagine having friends who come to your place and say, okay, since we don't have the money to go to all these, it's fancy places, they come to
Yeah.
your place, you sit down there with their diaries, and the whole night we strategize, what can we do to build our businesses?
Mm.
That
Mm.
can help. That's the brain trust right there.
Yeah. What I find sometimes astonishing as in our societies is you find, stockfels and stuff where we can run a stockfel so impressively that at the end of the year we go to a bottle store and we buy the most expensive brands of alcohol and beers and all of that stuff so that we can share. I mean, I find it puzzling that why don't we shift our mindset to say, look, we're doing a stock fair, but we're not there for the for SAB, South African breweries. We're there for the shares, or we're there to create that chain, that network, to kind of further ourselves as a society. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I just find that very fascinating that we actually don't look at it in that light.
I think it has to do with we've been programmed. We think in a certain way. That's why I've said in one of my books that as Black people, we can come together to bury each other, but not to empower one another.
Mm, mm,
Social club burying each other, good. Everybody comes in. We want to
mm,
bury each other. But doing business, and here's the thing, everything in life, it's a numbers game. It is a
mm,
numbers game. It's so strange that in South Africa, we've got a numbers.
mm,
White
yes.
people are 2 million. 2 million. We've
Mm,
got what? 58 million, 2 million. Now,
mm,
if you look, maybe Black people are around what? 56 million or
mm,
55 million. What is that 55 million doing? It's a numbers game. We are losing it. To
mm,
me, I know I will be stepping on the toes of certain politicians. Trying to take somebody else, bank, whatever, it's not ideal. Why don't we
mm,
create our own and then we try to shift, shift the traffic? The traffic no longer goes there, it goes to ours. It's a numbers game.
yes.
If the traffic goes to our banks and they don't go to those banks, ultimately those banks will collapse. I grew up at a time when there was something called consumer boycott, where they said we don't buy in town. And guess what? Most of the businesses they collapsed. We didn't buy. They made sure
Mm,
that nobody buys. So
mm,
imagine if we start buying our own rather than teaching our people and start at school. Don't buy Gucci when there's a CPOS gene. Buy CPOS G. Be proud
mm,
of
mm,
what I had an opportunity of going to China in 2015, and I've observed one thing. Chinese, what they do, they have a base, and their base is China.
mm,
So that's why from China, because they've established themselves in China, they can go and conquer the world.
yes.
So if I'm doing a business, what's my base? I listened to one of the richest men in China, Jack Ma. When
Mm,
he created Baba, he says Amazon is like a shark in the ocean. But as
mm,
Alibaba, we are going to become a crocodile in the local Yangtze River. He says,
mm,
as Alibaba, we cannot compete with Amazon in the ocean. They will tear us apart. But he
mm,
said, if Amazon try to compete with us in the Yangtze River, we're going to destroy them. And guess what? They built Alibaba from the Yangtze River in China. And
mm,
because it's a strong base, Alibaba could spread all over the world. So that's what
yes.
happens. If I'm doing a business in Mamelodi, in Soshanguve, in Soweto, it's my base. From
Yeah.
Soweto, I can spread. If everybody, I get people to
Mm,
support my business in Soweto. I
mm,
mean, Mamelodi, for example, they've got what, 100 and something thousand, 100,000. Now, in the 100 and something thousand people, you get only 10,000 to support your work. Surely, I mean, you'll be smiling all the way to the bank. And
yes.
where do you get 10,000? Your friends. I mean, but unfortunately, your friends don't think like that. They want to party with you, but they don't want to do business with you. So
Mm,
2021, if you want to do business with me, then no, let's not waste time.
mm, mm, yes. Getting the right people around you, getting the right support structures, and getting positive mindsets or positive people around you. That's a very good point there you make. Just gonna take one question from 𝐒𝐲 𝐓𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐥𝐸. How's the entrepreneurship climate like for emotional intelligence and business vision?
Okay. As I said, we spoke about the issue of emotional intelligence. When you go into business, you go there knowing that it's a battle right there. It's not a kindergarten. And if I go there, like what happens with many people, a lot of startups, people go into business, they make money. I remember one friend of mine was telling me when he went into business, he got a tender and he made what, 400K. And when he got 400K, he became excited, spent all the 400K going to hotels and doing all the stuff. And guess what? He ran out of money. And for the next a year or two, there was no money that was coming in. Is the issue of emotional intelligence. When money comes in, don't get excited. You need to have, relax, wait. I got a plan. Some of the money I need to divest, reinvest it into my business. Some of the money I need to diversify. So with us, it's like you're doing business right now. You reach the million rand mark. Now you start buying a car with your personalized name. So everybody you can show them that you have arrived. And really you haven't. But because we have the mentality that, if I drive a big car, I'm successful. And that's not true. Because I can drive a big car because I managed to borrow it. Should I use the word borrow? You borrow it from the bank. Because that's why when you sign for that car, they don't say owner. They say borrower. They borrowed you.
Yes.
So what we should do is like, yes, when you get the money, start, emotional intelligence. You don't get excited. You need to have your feet on the ground to say, okay, now I've got the money. What am I going to do? I've got a plan, because you need to have a plan. You cannot have the plan when the money is there. You need to have a plan that if the money comes in, what are some of my plans? What are my short-term plans, medium-term, long-term plans? So when the money comes in, what do I do? Okay, I've got a substantial amount of money. Now I need to break the money into pieces. I'm going to reinvest part of this in debt. The other money, I'm going to use it for other things. And when you have a cool, you're cool in how you approach things. You don't get excited. Chances are you'll make it in business, because if you're going to go with emotions in the business space, you're not going to make it. I mean, how many times have heard of business people who committed suicide because things were not going the way they wanted? That's emotional intelligence. How many people like they ended up being drug addicts and all that because things were not going well? Because with business, we need to understand, like life, it's not all going to be smooth flowing. No, smooth sailing. There will be days where things don't just add up. Things don't go well in business. Businesses, they will, like right now, a lot of businesses, there are challenges. I mean, I remember I wrote books, a lot of books, and I was selling books from me, because there's a reason why I was selling them from the boot of my car. Because when you go to some of the well-established, bookstores, they will tell you they buy books from the middleman. They have their middleman, their supplier. And their supplier will tell you that the book is worth more, what, 200 rand. I can buy it from you for 40 rands. And you are surprised, why 40 rand? Because he wants to make a markup. And then the next thing, that bookshop will also put a markup. The next thing on the shelf is 200 rand. And you buy a book, you think I'm getting 200 for every copy, only to realize I'm getting 40 rands. Now I had to sit down and said, okay, now there's a lockdown. People are not moving. What do I do? The next step is to do ebooks. So I said, okay, fine. I turned some of my books into ebooks, and I did my self-publishing on Amazon. I put them on Amazon. I said, okay, I'm testing the waters. I'm not going to be emotional about it. If things take time to happen for me to make money, it's fine. I understand. To be in business, you need patience. Rome is not in a day. It's not just you do business, the next thing you make $1 million in a year. That's not how it starts. That's not how it is. If you do make $1 million, you are fortunate, but yeah, there will be challenges along the way. That's why you need to have emotional intelligence.
Yes, that's beautiful points there. Cat underscore MRP mentioned something very important here, which is, I think, around strong financial education. I mean, as a previous educator, do you think our current educational systems kind of are able to provide that, or are providing that rather?
If truth be told, we were never taught anything about financial literacy. Nobody knows it, including the teacher and principal. Everybody, we don't know it. So what happens is we all get into debts. There was one article some years back. It says South Africans, they smell good, they drive big cars, they live in upmarket, they drink expensive beverages, but the majority of them are broke. Because what we do, we live a lie. I look successful, but if in truth I'm not. So the issue of financial literacy, if I start working, I get a job, they are paying me what, 10,000 rands. Now the next thing, I'm already wearing your Gucci. Everybody sees me that he has made it, and it's not true. And you find that all the amount of money I've got debts that are more than my salary, and in order to get my balance my balance sheet, I end up having to borrow. And I remember myself, I went through that situation. Nobody taught me financial literacy, and even when I was a teacher, I don't remember anybody doing financial literacy. Learners at school, they are taught accounting, and accounting is how to manage other people's business. They don't teach you how to manage your own. So I think it needs to go back there. The issue of financial literacy it has to be a subject, financial literacy. I was involved in one project where, from NetBank, where we're training people in financial literacy, and you see there's a lot of gaps. So financial literacy is something we need, because all of us, we deal with finances. So if we are never trained on how to deal with finances, it's like being given an aircraft and they said, come get in there. And they say, here's a manual, you can fly this plane. I'm sure, surely you're going to. So yeah. So basically, financial literacy is very key.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point that you raise. I think, and especially within our societies and stuff, where you find that.
Did you hear what I said? Yeah.
Yes. Where you find that we grew up in situations where we didn't have much, and then you get that first job and you get that first big gig or whatever it is. Then what you decide to do is you buy that vurpa, because you just like the sound of it, right? And then you forget that that vurpa comes with 4,000 or 5,000 rands installment, and then nobody tells you that, hey, guess what? You have to pay insurance for that thing, right? And insurance, because you're young, you pay another 2,000 rands. Nobody tells you about that, and then it's kind of tough lessons that you learned, and then you find that to be financially or from a growth perspective. I think we're having difficult connectivity, difficulty connecting to you. Are you back?
Yeah, no, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry, I lost my chain of thought there for a second. I'm just going through some of the questions, just seeing if I can get a question up. Let's see. What's the difference between a mentor and a business coach? Is there a difference?
Yeah, well, a business coach is somebody who major in business. I mean, you can have a mentor who doesn't know anything about business. So there's a total difference. If I can mentor you on how to write books, but now does it necessarily mean that I can be a business coach? I doubt that. So I don't subscribe to this thing of one being jack of all trades and master of none. There are things that you know and things that you don't know. So you can't be a business coach and be a mentor at the same time. If you're a business coach, fine. You can also be someone's mentor. But you can be somebody's mentor and not necessarily be a business coach.
100%. Let's see, what does 𝐒𝐲 𝐓𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐛𝐚? I would wish to combine fintech and finance to achieve higher yield these days. We are youth fighting for the lesser fish to catch. Yeah, I think that's sometimes true. Are we fighting for the lesser fish to catch? Are we finding that we are in an environment where, I mean, if you look at the top percentage of the top richest people, I mean, it's not even 5% of the population, like right
Yeah,
there. Are we fighting for scraps? Entrepreneurs.
that's true. And basically, it's like, who do you know? Some. Sadly, if you don't know anybody, you're gonna struggle. But then I always say, where there's a will, there's a way. We can sit here and talk about all the challenges that we are having, all
Yeah.
the getting the square, the breadcrumbs that falls from other people's table. But we can sit down and say, what is it that we can do? Because as I said, there's always a way. There's a way somewhere. For example, for young people, you have NYDA. I know I've done a lot of training for NYDA.
Yeah.
There are a lot of gaps with NYDA, but I believe that as young people, you can't sit and fold your arms and say nothing can be done. You need to start also engaging NYDA and say, NYDA has been created to help young people who are in business, train them, help them to do their startups. So if NYDA, like you guys engage it, hopefully something will come out of that.
Mm-hmm. And I think for myself, like you mentioned NYDA and stuff, where do we get this information? I mean, I learned about NYDA really not more than, what, 3 years ago. I did not know about NYDA at all. Where do people find this information? I mean, this is valuable information, I think, for people in order to kind of progress.
Again, we live in an information age. We can fold our arms and say there are no opportunities out there, or we can go out there and say I'm going to search for information.
Yeah.
If most of the things that I do, I'll go on Google. Google is my friend,
Yes,
and I'll research. If I write a book, there's something that I don't know, I go on Google. I research. Because if you don't research, you're not gonna find anything. So you do your research. So we need to start researching.
100%.
You research. So we need to research.
Yeah. And then let's see, one more question here. Okay, it's not a question, it's just are they books about financial education? I believe they are. And as Bab Shabalala mentioned, research. I think you might be able to find that particular book, unless you do have one or two books, Bab Shabalala, that you have in mind. Or
Well, there's multiple books. I have read a lot of books. There are a lot of books out there. There's one by John Kreiner. It's The Rise of a Hungry Nation. It talks about how China started from nothing to what they are today.
yeah.
There's books by Richard Branson. I've read books about business. You read about Richard Branson. They can just Google anything about Richard Branson, and you get a lot of things about business. Personally, from my side, I wrote a book called The Mind of a Foreigner. And basically, it talks about what foreigners did. What do foreigners do that we are not doing? Because foreigners come into our country with nothing. And before you know it, they end up being successful. What is it that they do? So somebody can also check, my book on Amazon, The Mind of a Foreigner. Check that. Hopefully, you get in some information on what you can do. I mean, here's another example. Let me just throw in this. It's part of what's in the book. When the Chinese came to South Africa, Chinese people, when they came to South Africa, talk about donkey years ago, they tried to get jobs in the mines, but they could not be hired because most of the skilled jobs in the mine were given to white people. So the Chinese had to compete with blacks to do the unskilled jobs, but most of the jobs were dominated by blacks. And you know what the Chinese did? They sat down, they said, what can we do? And they created something, a lottery called Fafi. They created Fafi.
And they thrived at it.
And they thrived. Lottery without even paying a single cent, no tax, nothing. They go there to every township and somebody says, I've dreamt these. And they bet. And what happens, they take money from a group of poor people, they give it to one poor people, and the rest they keep it for themselves. The Chinese are smiling all the way to the bank.
That is impressive. Thank you so much for joining us. I see Kamo was asking, well, where can we get a hold of your books? I believe you can do that at Amazon. Just the names of your two books that you have out.
Well, it's not. It's roughly like I've got 10 books already.
Or 10? Okay.
Yeah, 10 books. So if you go to Amazon and you just write Sai Chabalala, the books will appear. Those are ebooks. But if somebody wants hardcover, because there are other people who want paperbacks, that's when you'll contact me and yeah, let's talk. I'm there on Facebook, Sai Chabalala. They can also, like, my number is there, 074 450 4421, 074 450 4421. They can check me on WhatsApp. And yeah, let's talk. And I'm not only just writing books, but I'm also helping people to write books. I'm now sitting with 20 people that became authors through me. I mean, I've helped these guys. I believe in one thing: if I've mastered something, I have to go and teach others to do what I've done. I don't believe in this thing of saying I'm the only guy in the family who drives a Mercedes-Benz. That doesn't impress me. If you drive a Mac, teach everybody in your neighborhood to drive Mercedes-Benz like you. So imagine you are a street that drive Mercedes-Benz. That's what I believe in.
100%. Thank you so much. And then for your Twitter handle, for your Twitter and Instagram handles again, I didn't catch that.
My Twitter is Sai Chabalala. Instagram is @Sai Chabalala. And yeah, Facebook. Basically, I'm more active on Facebook more than any other thing. Sai Chabalala, Facebook. And yeah, basically that's that. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. And to everybody that's joined us, you know what to do. Find Mr. Chabalala at Facebook and engage with them a little bit more if you want to. If you're interested in that, in authoring or whatever it is, Dlamini, I will drop. We'll post all the details after this session. We'll definitely do that with all the handles and all of that stuff and all the different contacts, whether it's Facebook or WhatsApp. I believe he also mentioned WhatsApp. We'll drop all those details for you. All right, perfect. Departing words from you, sir.
Well, being positive in a negative world is a mindset, and it's not a feeling. So if you have a positive mindset, you'll always find a way to overcome negative situations. Negative experiences will always be part of our lives, but as I said earlier, we have the ability to respond. So we have to be responsible in whatever that we do. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was great having you.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for hosting me. Bye.
Bye.